12 absolutely terrifying PG-13 horror movies that feel like R-rated. Most of the horror movies that send a shiver down your spine are usually R-rated. When we think of PG-13 horror flicks, we generally think of a cash grab attempt that mellows down every possible scary moment. It promises a lot, but delivers very little. However, there are a few exceptions, where we find some films that work wonders with their family-friendly tag as well. As you would expect, these horror movies do not play out on gore or morbid content. Their tactic to scare the life out of you is through tension and a gripping plot. PG-13 is a concept that is relatively new, and it was coined in 1984. Prior to that, such films were usually filled with campy humor and cheeky moments that were more funny than scary. In the recent past, however, there have been some major shockers in the PG-13 horror genre. In this video, we have brought to you some absolutely terrifying movies that have gotten away with a PG-13 rating but feel like an R-rated flick in every way. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. I Am Legend 2007. Imagine being the last man on Earth and struggling with the search of finding another like you. This movie takes you through the agonizing experience as you watch the protagonist, Robert Neville, battling it out all by himself. It all started off when a virus was created to fight cancer. It did work for a while, but soon the virus turned out to be a fatal plague and most of the people were killed. Some others turned into mutated creatures, and now the entire population of New York, and maybe the entire world, has turned into carnivorous bloodsuckers. They fear light, and their sole purpose to survive is to spread the virus continuously. A virologist, Robert Neville, is a rare survivor, and it has been 3 years since the outbreak. He desperately looks everywhere for a sign of life and sends out radio messages in the hope that someone would intercept them.
Anybody, please. You are not alone.
He and his loyal German shepherd Samantha scout the streets during the day to look for food. At night, he has to lie low and he experiments with his own blood to reverse the effects of the virus.
GA series serum 391 compound 6 commencing human trials.
However, the mutated creatures watch every move he makes from the shadows. They are just looking for one small mistake on Robert's end and a perfect time to strike. Can humanity's last hope cure the deadly disease and come across other survivors? This movie was adapted from the famous novel by Richard Matheson, and the director Francis Lawrence certainly did justice to the terrifying storyline. He hits a home run with a brilliant atmosphere in a post-apocalyptic New York, and you would feel like you were in the middle of absolute destruction. It is quite unnerving to see the empty streets around Times Square and a lonely scientist fishing in the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Will Smith, who plays the protagonist Robert Neville, shows a lot of maturity in this transforming character. Slowly, we will get to see the monsters around him as they develop into more aggressive and intelligent creatures with time. However, the movie is not flawless, and the ending didn't strike a chord with many viewers. Besides the absurdity of the climax, the CGI characters looked a tad bit silly in some scenes. They were scary, but they were not real enough at times. We often felt that the movie could have done better with a bit more explanation, and maybe a director's cut would have better explained some parts of the narrative. Overall, the haunting, edge-of-your-seat suspense makes this movie worth your time, and if you want to enjoy a brilliant adaptation of a terrific novel, do give it a try. The Ring 2002. A mysterious videotape is doing the rounds, and people who watch it die within 7 days. A journalist named Rachel Keller is investigating the mysterious death of her niece and 3 of her friends. They all died on the exact same day at the same time, and Rachel goes undercover to find out the cause. She scouts the cabin where her niece and her friends were staying before their deaths. She comes across the videotape and watches it. Indeed, the curse is true, and she receives the fatal phone call. She only has 7 days to live, and to make things worse, even her son has watched the tape.
He watched the tape.
Now she must figure out a way to break the curse. Rachel teams up with her ex-husband Noah to do some research about the video. They find out shocking facts about Anna Morgan and her daughter, Samara Morgan, who made the video. As the unknown secrets are slowly unraveled, it is to be seen if they can escape their inevitable deaths. It is easy to understand how this film bagged a PG-13 rating. The Ring cleverly skips the gore and over-the-top madness and relies solely on the psychological aspect. The idea works wonders because in no time you will be gripped by fear as the narrative takes shape. This movie is an adaptation of the Japanese movie Ringu, and it is better to call it a smart improvisation. The story is downright creepy, and the images were more haunting than dumb teens getting hacked to death in slasher flicks. We loved the gloomy ambience that was a perfect mood booster. Besides the brilliant plot, Naomi Watts impresses with her powerful performance. There are no cheesy special effects to ruin your experience, and the backstory is really coherent. The creepy music is unforgettable, and the auditory construction ensures that a tension-filled atmosphere is created. The director, Gore Verbinski, might have skipped the gore, but he makes up for it with his stylish shots and suspenseful progression. It has been almost 20 years, and it still remains one of the scariest movies in Hollywood. For best effects, watch this one on the biggest screen you can get a hold of. 1408, 2007. Mike Enslin is a cynical and skeptical writer. His books are about supernatural phenomena in hotels and other haunted places, and he debunks all paranormal occurrences.
We're down. I'm taking you with me. This may not all be real.
For his latest book, he heads to New York and decides to spend a night in the Dolphin Hotel's fabled room 1408. It has been made permanently unavailable for the guests because of some past experiences, and the manager is reluctant to hand him the keys to the room. Over the decades, there have been more than 50 deaths in the cursed room, and the manager is willing to offer Mike upgrades instead of that room. But Mike is determined to stay, and he even threatens to sue the hotel if he is refused. Reluctantly, the manager allows him access to the room, but he maintains that the room is pure evil. Mike scoffs at the warnings, but soon after he checks in, the most terrifying moments of his life start gripping him. It turns out that the rumors about room 1408 were not myths after all. Will it become the final chapter of Mike's new novel, or will he succumb to this cursed room? This movie is based on a short story by Stephen King, and it comes after a long break where we did not see Stephen King's stories on the big screen. The director successfully created the perfect thriller, and you wouldn't care about the thin premise once the terror starts to unfold. It doesn't always make sense, but it is effective throughout the narrative. We love John Cusack's performance as the protagonist, and once the room takes a life of its own, we are witnesses to his painful past memories. Samuel L. Jackson as the manager who tries to stop Mike from entering the room gives a chilling performance. This movie is not meant for those who love the slash and hack flicks, but the ones who are into a smooth and effortless storytelling will enjoy it for sure. There are no ghostly special effects or abrupt moments. Instead, the narrative manages to get under your skin with a psychological approach. From our understanding, there is some kind of evil presence in the room that could look deep into the troubled souls and torture them with their own personal demons. We haven't seen too many supernatural thrillers that have been handled better, and this one almost gets in your head and leaves you in shock in the aftermath.
Give me your name, demon!
The Exorcism of Emily Rose, 2005. Emily Rose was a Catholic college girl who was troubled by sinister manifestations of evil. She claimed that she was possessed and medical treatment ceased to work for her.
We both felt that she was beyond medical care.
She then turned to her faith, and she was submitted to her priest, Father Moore, for an extensive exorcism procedure. Emily believed that she was being possessed by as many as 6 demons, and even her family authorized Father Moore for the exorcism. However, things did not go as planned, and she dies under the care of her priest. Father Moore is accused by everyone, and he is charged with negligent homicide. He is arrested and put on trial for suggesting Emily to discontinue her epilepsy medications, and he's being held responsible for her death. The trial begins, and he tries his best to convey the court of law that there are dark forces at work. The trial soon becomes a battle between faith and science, and not many people are willing to believe the priest. To know what actually happened to poor Emily, you must watch this nail-biting horror flick. This is not the kind of horror movie that you usually come across. The makers suggest that it is based on a true story. But even if that is not the case, nobody can deny the thrill in this movie. The narrative succeeds in frightening the audience, and the real-life incident of Emily Rose lends credibility to the storytelling. Another Another thing that we loved about the narrative is how things changed according to the perspective of the character that described the events. It raises some powerful questions regarding religious beliefs and practices. There are some scary moments, especially during the exorcism process, and if you could ignore the cheesy demonic animation and the overdramatic music, the movie could strike fear even in the bravest of viewers. Jennifer Carpenter as Emily makes the character believable, and her possession scenes are simply incredible. However, the movie is not flawless, and there are some gaping plot holes that could have been handled better. The ending left us longing for more, and it is probably the reason why this movie wouldn't be remembered as a cornerstone of a horror genre. It is still watchable, and in many ways a perfect lesson in mainstream horror filmmaking. Insidious, 2010. It all starts when the Lambert family moves into their new home. Josh Lambert is a teacher, and he moves in this new house with his wife Renee and their 3 children Dalton, Foster, and Callie. Soon after moving in, their eldest son Dalton falls from a ladder and hits his head on the floor. This severe injury pushes him into a coma, but the doctors don't seem to understand the exact problem. Strange, unexplained things start occurring in the house, and Renee starts seeing creepy apparitions. She believes that the house is haunted and wants Josh to move to another place. To sort things out, they bring in a friend of Josh's mother named Elise Rayner. She comes in with a team of ghost hunters to investigate the matter. She explains that Dalton is a traveler who could leave his physical body and remain in astral projection.
With the ability to leave their physical body and to travel to different places in astral form.
At this moment, his spirit is lost in a place called the Further, and it is not meant for the living. Several entities are trying to get inside his physical body, and a demon wants to do the same to cause pain to others. It turns out that Josh is also a gifted traveler, and he must seek Dalton in the Further to bring him back. Time is running out for the family because the demonic takeover will make things worse. It is hard to believe that such an engaging movie was shot in merely 3 weeks. Initially, it gave the vibe that it would be some cheesy camper horror flick, but we were pleasantly surprised. Coming from the guys who made Saw, you might expect a lot of gore, but you won't get any. But make no mistake, you will still be screaming like a 14-year-old girl at a Justin Bieber concert. Right from the opening sequence of the movie, we are presented with this haunting tension that doesn't let go of you till the very end. Even the simple family life of the characters comes across as terrifying. The story is clearly original, and the detailing left us impressed. It might borrow some elements from movies like Poltergeist, but the ideas are pretty innovative. We must spare a word for the brilliant musical score that simply enhanced the ambience. The biggest surprise is that such a scary movie is rated PG-13, and this is one scary journey that you can take with young companions as well.
Goodbye, Mama. I love you.
Mama, 2013. Jeffrey Desange was a partner in an investment brokerage, and he lost his mental stability after a major financial collapse. He killed several of his co-workers and even his estranged wife.
Also senior partner, was in the office at the time of the shooting and is now gone missing.
He then kidnapped his 2 younger daughters, Victoria and Lily, and took them to a cabin in the woods. Just as he was about to kill them, an unknown entity grabbed him. The sisters were found 5 years later, and it was a miracle that they survived so long in the wilderness. Clearly something or someone was protecting them out there, some entity that they refer to as Mama. Lily and Victoria are reunited with their uncle, and they go to live with him and his girlfriend. However, some strange events soon rock their peaceful world. They start to wonder if the sisters were really alone in the woods, and if they weren't, did something follow them into the house? If Mama is an evil spirit that shares ties with the sisters, is the family safe sheltering them? This is not your typical ghost story. The narrative settles you in gently, and the characters in the mix of things are both likable and flawed. The scary moments are subtle, and there are times when you would be caught off guard. The well-crafted story makes this a must-watch for horror fans, and it proves that PG-13 movies can be scary as hell. Directed by Andy Muschietti, this movie has some impressive camera work to capitalize on the perfect ambience. The performances by Nikolai Coster-Waldau and the 2 sisters are commendable. One thing we loved about this movie is how they portrayed the so-called evil entity. Mama was created using a very tall, thin actor and some CGI effects. She looks somewhat funny with her weird hair and asymmetrical face, but there was something very sad about her as well. She was the right mix of scary and sorrow, and you would feel sympathy for the villain as well. There are plenty of cliches that you have watched numerous times in horror flicks, but ignore the minor flaws to enjoy a spine-chilling horror thriller.
I swear I was on a bus.
I don't remember anything after that.
Split 2016. Kevin Wendell Crumb suffers from dissociative identity disorder, and he has as many as 23 different personalities. Casey, Marcia, and Claire are schoolmates, and after a fun birthday party, they are kidnapped by Kevin. His psychiatrist, Dr. Karen Fletcher, knows about his personality disorder, but she has no clue that he has kidnapped 3 girls. Casey is the smartest and most feisty among the kidnapped young girls, and she tries to use some of his weak personalities to escape. However, some of the powerful personalities constantly fight back. Things get a lot worse when a 24th personality is revealed. This is the deadliest one of them, called the Beast, and the girls will have to find a way to get out of this mess. Is the monster within Kevin real, or is it just conjured by his demented imagination? The movie was inspired by a real-life case of multiple personality disorder where Billy Milligan was diagnosed with this mental illness. He was charged with 3 rapes, and he couldn't explain his crimes due to his condition. In this movie, James McAvoy steals the show as the disturbed Kevin Wendell Crumb. All his personalities displayed are distinct from one another, and he deserves a few awards for this performance. Split is storytelling at its finest, and the makers do not have to resort to gore or special effects at any point. The tension prevails for much of the movie without any obligatory car chase or intense gunfight. The story gives you chills, and the mesmerizing acting by James McAvoy adds as icing on the cake. You could say that this movie is more of a psychological thriller, but horror fans wouldn't be disappointed. Some people have a problem with a somewhat distorted representation of split personality disorder, but folks, the movie is not a documentary made on the illness. It is supposed to be scary and entertaining, and it does so successfully. If you have watched and admired films like The Sixth Sense and Unbreakable, this is a must-watch for you.
Help you how, Ben?
The Skeleton Key, 2005. Caroline had ignored her own dying father in the past. To atone for her sins, she took up a job as a hospice worker who cares for the elderly and ailing people. She is employed in Louisiana and has to take care of an elderly man named Ben Devereaux. Ben has suffered from a stroke, and he is completely bedridden and unable to speak. However, Caroline soon stumbles upon some strange things in the house. Ben's wife Violet is surprisingly cold, and her behavior raises suspicion in Caroline. The suspicions are aggravated when she finds a secret room in the attic. She acquires a skeleton key and gets into the room to find various items like blood, bones, hair, and spells that clearly seem like someone has been practicing black magic. Violet denies any knowledge of the secret room, but it is very fishy because Ben had a stroke after entering the attic. Caroline wants to find out the actual case behind Ben's ailment, and for that, she might have to pull him out from the horrors that hold him captive. This movie is a masterpiece that sets you up for the intriguing adventures of a young caregiver. Besides the atmospheric surroundings and the haunting background score, the film boasts of some beautiful photography that will keep you glued to the screen. However, the real showstopper of the movie is the twist at the end. We are still spooked by the ending, and it is one of the most disturbing things that we have seen. Kate Hudson is brilliant as the protagonist, and the heroine in distress is way smarter than the usual stereotypes. Even Gina Rowlands adds to the creepy narrative with her acting. The trailer of this movie was rather lackluster, and we did not expect such a great film coming up. Everything from character development to attention to little things have been taken care of, and the plot twists make sure that you remember this for a very long time. If you want a fresh, original horror flick with a unique twist to the climax, this is just the movie that you are looking for.
People used to say that she was evil and that she could get inside people's heads.
Lights Out, 2016. Paul works in a textile factory, and he dies a horrifying death at the hands of some supernatural entity that lurked in the shadows. His wife Sophie is mentally unstable, and that makes it all the more difficult for his young son Martin, who is already dealing with the loss of his father. As the days go by, Sophie's condition worsens, and she seems to be talking to her imaginary friends in the shadow of her room. Martin can barely sleep, and his trauma brings in his elder stepsister Rebecca. She takes him in, and after hearing the whole story, she recalls her own experience with Diana many years ago. Rebecca and her boyfriend Brett want to get to the root of the matter, and they are about to uncover some of the darkest secrets about Sophie. Her mysterious attachment with a supernatural entity seems to be the tip of the iceberg. Once the lights go out, all their lives are in danger. This is one of those movies that will get your pulse rate high, and one of the good things about the narrative is that it reveals the horror element right from the start. However, that does not take away from the mystery at all, and the fear factor does not wear off till the end. There are some well-written characters that immediately suck you into the story. The plot is not devoid of emotions, and the solid climax only makes it wrapped into a perfect shell. If we must pick a flaw, it would have to be the somewhat unrealistic behavior from the main characters at times. Some of the scenes are tough to watch simply because of their sheer creepiness, and the paranormal entity itself is spooky enough. We would rate this movie right up there with the best horror flicks, and even the most difficult people to frighten would be scared by this narrative. The acting performances by Gabriel Bateman and Teresa Palmer take this movie a notch higher, and it is a delightful treat for the horror fans. In short, this creepy and satisfying film has used a dark, clever, and unnerving story to get our scariest nightmares. It would be a big miss if you choose to skip this one.
Suppose we do leave you. Do you think they will? Who? The intruders.
The Others, 2001. Towards the end of the Second World War, a woman named Grace comes to live in a mansion with her 2 children. She is a widow, and her son Nicholas and daughter Anne have a strange condition. They're vulnerable to light, and such is the extent of their photosensitivity that the curtains have to be drawn at all times in the house. All the doors in the house are closed, and special care has to be taken at all times to make sure that the kids don't get exposed to sunlight. Grace is a strict disciplinarian, and her kids are forced to learn their lessons and religious principles rigorously. She needs some help with all the work in the house, and she hires the services of Mrs. Bertha Mills as their housekeeper. A mute maid named Lydia and a strange gardener named Mr. Edmund Tuttle are the other helps in the house. Although the mansion is completely secluded, strange things start happening. Anne claims that there is a boy named Victor who visits them on a regular basis. Grace laughs it off initially, but soon enough, she has to face the reality. A shocking end reveals the true nature of the intruders and the painful secrets of Grace and her children. For those who complain about the lack of intelligent plots in Hollywood nowadays, this is a golden throwback to the time when movies made a lot of sense. The Others is perhaps one of the most hauntingly beautiful films that you will come across. The enchanting simplicity of the plot is one of its greatest assets, and even without the so-called Hollywood special effects, it manages to spook you to the bone. The narrative makes you thrive in anticipation, and the acting performances of everyone from Nicole Kidman to the kids are simply out of this world. Nicole Kidman in particular is simply breathtaking as the complicated mother Grace, and you will hate her and sympathize with her at the same time. The mansion is perfectly creepy, and the brilliant play with light and shadows do the trick. Some of the shots are so spontaneous that you will feel like you are right there inside the mansion. The climax is one to die for. It is the most unexpected part of the movie and throws you completely off balance. It is not something you will ever guess, and the ending alone is enough reason for you to check out this stunner. Drag Me to Hell, 2009. Christine Brown is a loan officer working with the bank. There have been a lot of things wrong with her life. Her relationship status with her boyfriend is confusing for her, and she is also competing with a colleague for the post of an assistant manager. She is thus worried that any sign of weakness that she shows will add a negative point in her evaluation for her boss. Mrs. Gannis, a proud Romani woman, begs her to extend her house loan payment. She would be evicted if the repayment process is not extended, but Christine is determined to act tough for her superiors to see. She denies the woman any extension and makes the worst call in her life. The woman retaliates with a curse, and soon Christine realizes that this is not an empty threat. In less than 3 days, she would be taken to hell by some impatient demon, and even her boyfriend is skeptical about her situation. Her only hope lies with a psychic who might know how to lift the curse. Will she be dragged straight to hell, or will she find a way out? This movie certainly managed to get away with a lot, given that it attained a PG-13 rating. This Sam Raimi flick made many think that he has gone soft, but after watching the movie, they were proved wrong. The director uses his ability to create tension and brings about an interesting tale to put together a horror show. There are some disturbing images, and the neat edit work makes it a visually pleasing work. If you don't get or appreciate black comedy, this might not be the right movie for you, but we were in awe of the typical Sam Raimi brand of humor. Yes, there are moments that are tacky and cheesy, but the movie still manages to send shivers down the spine. The story is pretty intense, and if you excuse the minor loopholes and absurdities, you have a clear winner in your hands. This is certainly a mainstream movie and not exactly a horror classic, but it is still extremely watchable for us. And back then, it was Sam Raimi's triumphant return to the horror genre.
They can't hear us.
It worked.
A Quiet Place, 2018. The movie is premised in a post-apocalyptic world. A family is living in absolute silence because even the slightest of sounds will invite deadly predators. These predators are possibly of extraterrestrial origin, and they have overrun the Earth completely. The Abbott family is living in a constant struggle where they try to survive against all odds. The urban jungle of New York is now characterized by deadly silence, and even the slightest of sounds can bring death for the family members. The family is resilient, and they learn the rules fast enough to adapt to this strange world. Their work is made worse by the eldest offspring, Reagan, who is deaf and cannot gauge the issue of sound. Her father is always trying to upgrade her hearing aid, and even in these horrible times, the family tries to live a normal life. With time, they get to know more about the predators, and their struggle continues. Will they see an end to this crisis, or will they succumb to their inevitable fate? It is quite a tough task to create a scary narrative with minimal dialogues. A Quiet Place is indeed quiet, and the use of sign language is what drives the story forward. However, that doesn't deter this intense and entertaining horror thriller. The cinematography is simply breathtaking, and so are the acting performances by the cast. The likes of Emily Blunt are brilliant as usual, and even the kids have chipped in with some impressive work. The concept is clearly innovative, but the story doesn't give much to dwell on the characters and their relationships. The focus is on the terrifying premise and all the action that unfolds. At times, we were stumped with the lack of understanding on what the creatures can and cannot hear. While such minor issues remain, it is still an intriguing creature feature without all the hacking and slashing. The movie is flawed without a doubt, but it is still quite a thorough entertainer that you must check out. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks everyone.